Hello and welcome back to Premier Injuries. You thought we had gone away for the summer? Not at all. We're going to be here for you throughout Euro 2021. As well as that, we've got some great content coming up towards the Premier League season. But in terms of Premier Injuries, at the moment, we're very European faced. And make sure to like, share and subscribe because we've got some amazing content coming up. We've got some group information in terms of teams and individuals, but we've also got some Rate My Teams. We've got some giveaways as well. So make sure to stay tuned to our social media handles. And all you have to do is press that subscribe button. It's free, it's fun, and you can join in with us. But without further ado, let's get started on Euro 2021. Just opening comments, Ben. How excited are you for what we've called it Euro 2020 blank?
We have, the Premier League season feels like a distant memory. We've had a few days to reflect, recharge, re-energise, come back rejuvenated. And really looking forward to it. Really enjoyed the Champions League final. And that sort of whet the appetite again for getting back into football. And slowly but surely, we're starting to see, those national team friendlies just taking place as teams are sort of just coming together and beginning to find their feet ahead of the tournament. So it's exciting. There's a steady build up. We're only 10 sleeps away at the time of recording, so it's not far away. And we've also just had the England squad announcement from Gareth Southgate. So again, that just only goes to sort of only ramp up that level of enthusiasm ahead of the big tournament. And we're expecting big things, I'm sure.
Yeah, and in terms of it means an interesting tactical layout for England. But in terms of how we will be playing Euros, so Ben and I will be undertaking Fan Team, the Euro 2021 or blank Euro 2020 as we call it, for that. And we will also be doing the official one. So some of our information, we will try to be as savvy as possible in kind of describing that this player costs more, and apologies, but if we don't cover that. So there will be a rule video coming up as well in terms of how we're going to play it differently for each kind of set. So it's very different with the Euro Fantasy official. You can change your captain, you can change your players, whereas Fan Team is more of like the traditional FPL style, which I think I enjoy, and the prices are somewhat a little bit different. But let's move on to the first group of the tournament. Group A, the starters. And the big boys in there are Italy. They come into this tournament with a lot of kind of positivity around them. Starting off with some of the data, they have a FIFA ranking of 7, and they qualified first in their group. And in terms of expected points as well, that is what we saw. But they also had 10 wins, no losses, no draws. They were pretty fantastic, averaging about 31 XG, 37 goals scored, so they actually overperformed in that, 2.47 XG per 90, and then the defence was rock solid, where I think only one other team around Europe actually conceded less than them, with just 4 goals and an XG conceded of 9.1, so an XGA of 0.9 per 90. Now what's interesting there again is an overperformance defensively, so we can kind of say this is a high quality side that can kind of keep up high quality performances. Now, they have a 25 match 3-year unbeaten run as of building up to this 100% record. And Mancini as well. Now, a lot of people talk about Italy being this proud defensive nation, but he's talked in the press February 2020 and in 2021 as well. No more defensive Italy. Italy must always attack. Those are his words, and this makes me really exciting. So in terms of it, Group A, I think they're probably one of the favourites to go through, and also they are a slight favourite in terms of the tournament there. But can you bring us any important information on injury news before we analyse actually the players that make up this amazing Italian team?
That I suppose the headliner as it currently stands is the Marco Verratti injury. The PSG midfielder is carrying a little bit of a knee problem. Now, again, it's not something that's considered really serious, but it's certainly something that's hampering him at this moment in time. So there are question marks over his fitness, although he has been included in that Italian squad. So fingers crossed, that's a good sign, that he's going to be okay for the tournament.
So continuing with this team then, injury news is not going to prevent too much. So let's start with actually how we think the team is going to play. Now, one of the problems that I've kind of looked at is who's actually going to play in that front line. So usually Mancini deploys a 4-3-3 system. As said there, it's not kind of set in stone who is going to be starting, and it's usually a movable front three. So in terms of it, I think Immobile is probably the most one that is kind of secured to start, and he's in fairly good form, sure to be a starter. But what I would say is he rarely replicates domestic form in international goals. Analysing his data, there's mixed numbers that do not immediately attract me to him. First of all is that lack of ability to convert things, but then this is also a especially highly defensive group that Italy find themselves in, and his 0.72 goals per 90 is impressive, putting him in the top 9% of Europe's top 5 leagues. But part of his inflated data comes from the fact that he takes penalty kicks, so that raises his goals per 90 and also XG per 90 data. When you kind of factor it down in terms of his actual non-penalty XG per 90, that actually reduces down to 0.44 per 90. So that goes from top 9% to 78th percentile, and his non-penalty XG per shot was quite low at 0.13, which is in the 37th percentile in Europe's top 5 leagues. So in terms of it worries me a little bit. Adding to that, obviously, as I said there, Immobile for his team is on penalties, but for Italy he won't be. When Jorginho is on the pitch, he is usually the penalty taker for that team. So there's quite a few things that go against him. And I'm a little bit reluctant to kind of buy into Italy's front line just because there's no assurances of who's going to be starting there and the difficult teams that they play in Switzerland and in Turkey, because those have actually fairly mean defences, but they might have a few problems themselves. So in terms of that, I'll work my way through my team and then I'll hand to you, Ben. But Verratti, Chiesa are going to be fighting out for the right wing. Insigne is probably settled on the left-hand side, and he might be one that appeals to a lot of people because he has an 83rd percentile non-penalty XG per 90. He's without penalties. He's getting into good opportunities, shooting a lot. Midfield, I would say avoid. Jorginho, as you said there, kind of worries maybe over Verratti. Barella make up that midfield, whereas they're not really people that you can kind of associate with scoring lots of goals. They might have an assist or two in them, but realistically not. Then Bonucci, Chiellini and Florenzi are the kind of shored starters at the back, but again, they don't have much goal threat. So you might be playing a 6.5 for Florenzi as a right back, but he's not kind of one that bombs forward. But this one might appeal to you as Mr. Differential Dinnery. I've got the left back probably down as Spinazzola, who there's kind of a debate between him and Emerson, who we remember from Chelsea, but Emerson hasn't played a lot this season, whereas Spinazzola has 6 goal involvements with Roma this season, starting left back for the team, and he might be risky, but I think he should be nailed. In terms of it though, he's got some nice defensive attacking data. He sits in the 97th percentile amongst defenders for XA per 90, 92nd percentile for shot creating actions per 90. And his play style of carrying the ball more into attacking areas rather than passing out means that he's in those areas. He has progressive carries of 99th percentile with 9.42 per 90 for club. So, yeah, kind of looking at that, does any of those appeal to you before we get on to the goalkeeper Donnarumma, who I think needs a bit more analysis there?
I mean, we spoke off air about this, and I actually flagged the Italians as my almost the dark horse for the tournament. I'm expecting them to go pretty strong, but I almost look at that Italian team and it's akin to a Manchester City team in the Premier League, FPL. They're a team that I expect to do well, but there are players, and I can't physically nail down the exact players that I want and that I think are going to deliver. To give you an example, you touched upon it. I think Italy had 19 different goal scorers during that Euro qualifying campaign. A lot of these players are coming in at the high end. They're premium, and when you're looking to nail down premium assets, you want a fairly good understanding that they're in a good chance of delivering. I think it was Verratti who was topped that scoring with 4 goals. And it's hard to see where those goals are coming from, spread out across the team. Defensively, I do like them. I do like Chiellini. Slightly different than how I would play the Premier League, where I'm maybe looking at, well, what do these players offer offensively as well? When it comes to the Italians, they're masters of the defense, and I do like them. And I think in tournament football, and I'm hoping it could be a case of, the first game, 2 games are usually fairly tight. Teams will grow into the tournament. And I'm expecting, Italy, they've got a nice group. They should easily come through that. They should top that group, I would think. And I can see them, like I say, growing into that tournament. And yeah, they're going to arrive with a lot of confidence. I mean, Roberto Mancini touched upon it when he was talking about his team at a very, very young squad. I think they had an average age of 23 to 24 when they actually qualified 10 straight wins. We're now 12 months down the line, 13 months down the line. So these players have developed. They've grown. They're off the back of another domestic season. And Italy can only benefit from that. So I do think there's 1 or 2 players in there, which I think will do really well. And I expect Italy to go deep in this European tournament.
Just on the Spinazzola then, because you said you're happy with some of the others, maybe Florenzi, Bonucci, but because he's not 100% now, does that worry you a little bit? And you'd actually go, maybe from your roots of your Premier League kind of style of going differential and for these more outrageous picks, are you going to be a bit more reserved, a bit more like a classical Italian defensive approach and go for sure starters?
Yeah, but I am with you. I have done a predicted 11 on that Italian team, and Spinazzola was in that back line. So he is a player that I have included. I think what you need to do, and managers will be looking at, what type of involvement have these players had at club level? You need to be playing regularly. You're getting thrust into, this elite level, high intensity, high octane environment. And, you can't really risk throwing players in there, that just haven't got the minutes in their legs and their load within their legs to be able to cope with that, because the last thing you want is a backline, particularly, chopping and changes because of injury and accommodating players. I think you really need to be picking players who have been, competing regularly for their club side, which, and I do like Emerson. He just, unfortunately, he's been, well down the pecking order under Tuchel.
So looking more at the goalkeeping situation now, we'll quickly cover this because I think Donnarumma, great potential for clean sheets, especially in this group. But Italy's strong defence means that he's unlikely to pick up save points. Now, a lot of people are kind of evaluating, should they get a maybe slightly cheaper goalkeeper because then they might pick up save points. But for me, I'm not too worried about that. I think, getting your bread and butter is kind of going for an Edison pick over maybe a Nick Pope. But I can't be wasting time on a Nick Pope because I might not have that ability to even play him going past certain games, and there might be dead rubbers that they're involved in. I kind of want a goalkeeper that I can not be wasting time with overthinking tactics and this and that. I just want somebody who's going to be starting. just an interesting statistical foible as well. I'm not sure if this will count for much, but he actually has a fairly good penalty saving record as well. Over the course of his career, saved 15 penalties, 33% of those he has faced, and he saved 2 in the Serie A this year. Might be something to consider, because obviously going into this tournament, VAR is going to be a big factor. And just quickly, talking of the tactics here, and then you can give final kind of viewpoint on goalkeeper and the team here. But in terms of it, Italy they like to be attacking under Mancini. He's kind of said that. There's a fluid front three movement there, and Immobile is going to be working with the wingers that are kind of working around him. But also the left back and the right back will join in the defence, with the attack every so often, because they do have those sitting midfielders in terms of Jorginho, Verratti, Barella, who will kind of shield the defensive back line so that other players can go forward, add width, add dynamism to that attack there. So you don't have to worry too much, but my worry is that Florenzi only has 1 goal for Italy since 2015 and 1 assist for them since then as well. So I don't think he's going to be too involved in the attack. So just quickly on it, I mean, are you looking at 1, 2, maybe more assets from Italy?
I think I might go in on a provisional draft with 2. In the third question, well, I've been burnt on Immobile a couple of times previously in different formats, and both domestically, and I find myself getting drawn towards him again. But at the minute, I think I'll be looking at least certainly for the beginning of this tournament, more as a defensive solid unit, looking at that group as well. I'm looking at some of the opponents in there, and I would expect it to be, I don't really fancy the Swiss or the Wales, dare I say. Turkey, there could be a bit of a little bit of a surprise package in there. But I'll go with the 2 Italians, I think, and it's, I might even consider throwing in a Jorginho, just based on that, what he brings in terms of his spot kick ability. So there's a question. It depends on my budget when I'm going through that final draft.
So you've mentioned them there, Switzerland. Let's have a quick look at this team making up Group A. FIFA ranking of 13, qualification position of 1st. And they actually overperformed because the expected points put them at 2nd. They had 5 wins, 2 draws, 1 loss. And in terms of it, so we're looking at the qualification here, but one of the caveats to a lot of this information that we give is a lot of things have changed in a year since this qualification has happened. If this was happening a year ago and the Euros was literally the June after this was over, this data would be quite useful. But we're having to look at a lot of friendlies and a lot of kind of Nation League stuff as well to factor in who's playing well. And quite a few teams, the likes of Holland, and I can't remember who else, but I've kind of analysed, have changed managers since the last tournament as well, the Euro qualifications as well. So even then, their tactics, the play style has changed. Switzerland come into this with 19 goals scored in the Euro qualifications, actually underperforming on their XG of 20.9, but they had a fairly impressive 2.48 XG per 90, goals conceded of 6, and X goals conceded of 5.3 or 0.78 XG against per 90. So a fairly solid defence. And I think this is where you could potentially get some interesting players, because looking at their top scorer, they only had 3 goals from Cedric Itten in the Euro qualifiers. Breland Bolo, Mehmedi and Benito were the main assisters with 2. They don't score a lot. They don't do a lot offensively. They're really predicated historically on defence, but they have made headlines recently. They reached the Final 4 of the UEFA Nations League, which I think was quite an interesting and big achievement for them. But the kind of perennial problem with them is the lack of goals. They also, in 2020, so since the qualification, have had a 7-game run without a win towards the end of the year. But then they have managed some commendable wins and draws, but a draw against Germany and a draw against Spain with a 5-game winning run after that. Jan Sommer is their first choice goalkeeper, so if you want somebody who's going to be kind of stuck between the sticks and a potential for clean sheets there, but I do think that Italy will probably score against them. Manuel Akanji is also the progressive centre-back who'll be kind of involved in passing and play, but if you're looking at anybody in the defence, I think Ricardo Rodriguez is the one to go for. He's a bit of an international fantasy football darling because of his shooting, set piece and penalty abilities. Analysing his club data, though, kind of made me not too sure if he has anything above the appeal of just set pieces and shooting in the penalties, because he had no goals or assists this season. He shoots a lot at club level, so he could pick up some shooting points, which is a new rule for fan team. So I think he'd get like an incremental thing there with shots on target. So that is a positive there. But overall, over the course of the season, he's not really had high quality shots, as he had a 0.04 non-penalty XG per shot, which really says that they're more speculative than anything else. So he's got penalties, he's got set pieces. I don't know if he'll score from open play, but there is something there. Haris Seferovic, again, not a brilliant goal scorer, as indicated by the lack of goals in qualifying. So I think that really the only one that I'm noticing here is kind of the Ricardo Rodriguez as the player that you'd really go for. Other ones, Seferovic, Mbambu, people like that, they don't really tickle my fancy. There's literally probably only one, maybe the goalkeeper as well, but I don't think Switzerland has a lot going for them. I mean, is there anything that you can kind of counter with there, Ben? Or, you said that they don't really appeal to you either.
Yeah, look, it's hard. It's slim pickings. I think, when I was looking through the players from qualifying and from what I know domestically, Cedric Itten, the Rangers man, he may be a surprise pick. He could be the surprise star man for the Swiss. I also, you've got Xherdan Shaqiri there as well. We all know his quality on his day. He's capable of winning games at any level, but you just don't know what you're going to get with the guy. Not even just game to game, but only half to half, and even halves within a half. He's as changeable as the weather as Shaqiri. And also, we're not even 100% certain where he's at in terms of his fitness. He's have perennial, calf issues. There are those massive tree trunks of his legs. So concerns coming off the back of a game of a very stop-start domestic season is he going to be in the right condition to be able to play consistency at the highest level for the Swiss, what they will need him to perform. But undoubtedly, like I say, if you do fancy him, then, he's a guy that's capable of bringing in some points. And then Bolo was the other one, the other obvious player that sort of springs to mind when we talk about the Swiss. But really, look, I'm struggling to find a lot of positives about that team. I really do think it's Italy's group, this one. Concerns defensively. I do, Ricardo Rodriguez, the veteran defender, I did like him. Just a word of note, I think in 3 of their 8 qualifying games, they conceded goals past that 84th minute. And there's nothing worse when you've got a clean sheet locked in the crosshairs, and then all of a sudden in the dying embers of the game, it's wiped off. There's nothing more frustrating. So that's just something to note there.
No, that's really good information. And what I would say is the Switzerland team are really predicated and proud of their defensive performances. They only let in 6 goals in the qualification process. The tactics of the manager are kind of variants of 3-4-2-1 or 5-4-1 formations. So it really is kind of focusing on getting transition defence into attack, but really they do sit compact and want to be an impassable defence. If you don't fancy their defence, then I wouldn't really go with any sort of their asset. Let's move on to Turkey, who I think are getting fairly good reports from a lot of people across the community here because of a good qualifying campaign and some great results recently and some good personnel in the side as well. They have a FIFA ranking of 29th, qualification position of second and expected position of second. They had 7 wins, 2 draws and only 1 loss. But what was the really impressive thing about them? They're not very high scoring with 18 goals and an XG of 18.5, so just 1.53 per 90. But what they did really well was concede only 3 goals in qualification, and their XG conceded was 7.2, so slightly higher, an XG conceded of 0.93 per 90. I think one of the big things for them, on top of that good qualification process, is they have the return of their legendary manager that saw them get to the World Cup semi-finals in 2002. So there's quite a psychological boost within that side. He was there managing them over the qualification process. So I think, sometimes myth becomes reality in some of these situations here because they just buy into it, and it does give you such a boost if somebody like that returns to the side. But one of the psychological losses for the team is actually the loss of top scorer Cenk Tosun, who we all know from the Premier League, he's had a really bad injury and he will not be at the tournament. And so a team there that struggled with scoring goals in qualifying, I think are really going to struggle going into this tournament against some pretty hardy defences of Switzerland and of Italy. So I would say ignore their attacking prospects at the moment. I don't really think that there's any good value in them because, quite frankly, I'm not sure how many, if they will score, apart from maybe against Wales. But the rest of the team, there are some interesting assets, especially really cheaply priced defenders. Shaqiri is their preferred goalkeeper, nice and cheap. So maybe he's somebody that you can have on your bench in case your starting goalkeeper doesn't play or something happens. But one of the ones that I really want to point out is actually the right back spot, which is held by Čalik, whereas the left back is much more up in the air. Čalik himself, intriguing because he has that potentially of clean sheets. We'll get on to recent form in a second, but he's the most creative player for Turkey during their qualifiers, tops the team for big chances created, and for a defender, really good underlying data. This season, he's managed 0.13 goals per 90, fairly regular with his shots too, of 0.7 per 90. 33% of them were on target. So again, he could be somebody, if he's taking regular shots, that he could get, a few extra points here and there just because of that. But his XG total per game and XG shot per game was not that amazing. What interests me most is his ability to assist his teammates. 0.09 assists per 90, 63rd percentile in Europe's top leagues. But we're looking at somebody here who's playing in not a very attacking kind of team here. So, you got to take what you can. And this is what I mean. He's probably the best in the Turkish defence. He's the most likely to get attacking outlet in that. But for progressive passes per 90, he got 4.58, which is pretty good. And he had 3.82 passes into the final third, which is actually in the top 14% of defenders in Europe's top 5 leagues. So I think that could be an interesting, quite cheap asset if you do want to go for Turkish defenders. I think Soyuncu obviously has the aerial threat, but really I don't think he's worth that little bit extra too much for a team that I don't think are going to score that much. With Turkey, it's probably going to be the bread and butter of clean sheets, which is pretty decent for quite a budget kind of player. But on top of that, not much else. I mean, are you kind of in agreement with that, Ben?
I am. No team conceded fewer goals during that qualifying campaign. I think the Turkish had 8 clean sheets in that little run. But we're talking over 12 months ago, and I think as you would attest to, they're consistently inconsistent at this moment in time. I took a look at that result, the recent result in the World Cup qualifier against the Netherlands. I think it was a 3-0 victory, and thought, wow, they are definitely on my watch list. But when you look at their performances in that Nation League, and they're dropping down into the after coming bottom, they drop down into Group C now. That's a slight concern. Cenk Tosun being ruled out as well. So yeah, for me, it's got to be in defence that we're looking at for Turkey at this moment in time. But although with a caveat, they could be a team that could grow into it as well. There'll be one that I'll be watching in the build up to this tournament to see how they perform in those sort of pre-tournament friendly matches.
One thing that worries me a little bit as well is kind of the front line. They're safe bets. Çakaloğlu, Yilmaz, Under are going to be starting there in place of Cenk Tosun, who won't be there. But there's no clear formation with the side. Senor Gunes, as I said, he's a legend of the team, but he's also known for being almost a bit frustrating because he likes to tinker. He likes to be a tactician. He's used 4-3-3, 4-1-4-1. He's used a 4-2-3-1, a 4-4-2, a 3-5-2. But usually it's kind of one in between those with the defensive focus. But the problem for me is he's almost been like Pep was in this Champions League final. Sometimes he's tinkering for the sake of tinkering. He's been almost too clever. And since that impressive qualification, Turkey have actually found themselves conceding far more often. And so this loses even a little bit of appeal of the only area of the pitch that I quite liked with them. In their last 11 matches, they've conceded 19 goals, which is really worrying, and only won one game in their Nations League. So their defence may see improvements with returning to full squad fitness. Demiral, the Juventus centre-back, should be back to fitness. Soyuncu should be there to kind of play beside him so that they've got almost the perfect centre-back pairing. But there is just that little worry that, kind of going into these tournaments, you want to be in form, and they haven't been. So, final team in Group A, and we've saved the best to last. No, we haven't. Wales, I don't think are going to do very well. Bless them, Wales. I would like them to have another 2016 story. I would love them to break the odds and go that extra little bit. But they go into this tournament with a lot off the pitch going against them, with managerial problems, and a lot on the pitch causing problems as well. FIFA ranking of 17th, qualification position of 2nd, expected position of 2nd, wins 4, draws 2, losses 2. They scored only 10 goals in qualifications, so attacking assets I don't think are that appealing. 10.9 XG, so they met it 1.33 XG per 90. And what's worrying as well is that their XG conceded per 90 was really close to that with 0.98. So they were only just getting a positive delta on their XG in these games. And then the goals conceded across that was 6, so only 4 goal difference there. As I stated, Ryan Giggs suspended due to a court case. Assistant managers stepped into this, but do you really want to be managed by your assistant manager going into these tournaments? Probably not. But I think the big problem is there's no first choice goalkeeper in terms of somebody that's playing in the Premier League or a big club and they're nailed on. Wayne Hennessy is the backup for Crystal Palace. Danny Ward is not the starter for his team. Ashley Williams is now retired. Joe Rodon and Nico Williams aren't starters for their defences. And then the big stars of the team, Bale and Ramsey, injured, inconsistent, not in good form at all really for their teams. Bale kind of come into a little bit towards the end of the season, but you can only do so much, and that is reflected in the fact that they only scored 10 goals in qualification. Also, qualification was not easy. Their route to the tournament was only sealed on the very last game, and they only had 2 wins against Azerbaijan, making up 50% of their total wins. Like, this isn't a good team. So, yeah, I think there's a lot to worry about with this Wales side. Tactically, they'll probably be a 3-4-3, 3-4-1-2, kind of playing to Ramsey and Bale's strengths. But there's not a lot that I like in this side. I think really kind of over-evaluating them is almost a little bit of a waste of time, because I don't think they'll make it out the group stage. They'll be hoping to be probably the 3rd best qualifying team if they are able to progress. But even then, it is highly unlikely. I mean, is there anything that you can say to change their mind? Maybe, you know, their relatively good form recently, won 5 of their last 8, or is that just kind of a distraction? Should we only be focusing on Italy from Group A and one other?
I'm trying to find the silver lining behind this cloud, and I'm struggling. Historically, you know, we can maybe look at how Greece performed, maybe when they won the European Championship. You know, they're a team that didn't score many goals. And you would suspect if Wales were to do anything, it's going to be on the back of a series of really tight, maybe 1-0 victories. I think of the last 20 games, they've only scored 18. And I think they got, was it maybe 8 goals in 10 qualifying matches, did we say? Look, they're a hard call. Gareth Bale, job done in terms of getting himself in a position where he can perform at the highest level for Wales. But we've even seen domestically, again, we come back to this, is he able to string games in quick succession? In tournament football, that's what it's all about. And when you're so heavily reliant on a player such as Gareth Bale, and if he's not firing on all cylinders, you look around that squad, and I'll hold my hands up, and, you know, I couldn't name, you know, I couldn't tell you some of those club sides where those players are coming from. I have absolutely no idea. And yeah, they could just fall a little bit short this year, unfortunately.
Yeah, it seems to be second fiddle FC with them. Ben Davies, Roden, a lot of these players are kind of backups to players within their own side. And one of the other kind of second fiddle things for me is that their 1.33 XG per 90 puts them below the likes of Finland, Slovakia, Hungary. This is really off-putting data, and honestly, I would like Wales to do well. You know, I have a soft spot for them. They're one of the home nations. I like seeing a home nation do well. But at the end of the day, it's not good stuff. They're in an extremely difficult group, and they'd be extremely lucky to even get out of it. So that is our Group A analysis, everybody. I hope that you found a lot of this information helpful and that you stay subscribed to the channel. Make sure to click that button. Give us a like, give us a comment, and also make sure to keep your eyes peeled to our social media and to the channel, because we'll be having some giveaways for the Euro 2020 tournament, because, you know, we just love getting involved with the community. We've got some great content coming up, Rate My Teams, other things like that, some Q&A sessions, and we'll be doing some live watch-alongs as well. This is going to be a fantastic tournament, some great fun, and some brilliant content. And of course, obviously, keep subscribed as well, because next season we're coming out with some incredible content for FPL as well. We've been teasing it. We'll let you know soon who some of our amazing guests are. But for now, I'm going to wish you the best of luck. Get those teams in and make sure that you have them ready, because we'll be asking to rate your teams very soon, and you can get involved with one of our videos. But for now, I'm going to hand it over to Big Ben to sign us out.
Thanks, Jason. Excellent, as always. So that's Group A done ahead of the blank Euro 2020 tournament, which starts in 10 sleeps at the time of recording. So really excited, looking forward. You will have groups B, C, D, the lot. We're going to be covering everything. So like you say, keep your eyes and ears peeled for our social media channels for updates, and also subscribe. Keep in tune and on top of all of our latest releases. But thanks for watching, guys. Any suggestions, any comments, bang them down below. We always do read them. And thanks again for watching, and see you again soon.